Hi everyone. It's been like a weekend since I started the YouTube channel. I'm looking at my dog. He eats everything. Um, so I wanted to share my take on Black Panther. Black Panther, there's a lot of mixed reviews. Not because the movie itself wasn't good. The movie was amazing. I mean, the acting, superb, everything. Like, there was nothing wrong with the film itself. It's just I'm having the battle between the woke people and just black people that were happy to see them as main characters in a movie. So it's definitely a lot of issues with political correctness, and there's issues with people basically stating that we shouldn't be getting excited because we need to know our geography better. Not because so much that Wakanda doesn't exist, but they're talking about, I don't even know where to start. It's just such a mess. I myself liked it for what it was. But I did not neglect to understand where some people could just view Black Panther as just sort of like a pacification. Basically, kind of like Black Panther could have been used to kind of like calm black people down so they'd stop complaining. I could see it that way too, but most importantly for me, I appreciated it for what it was, because the way I see it, advancement. I was a criminal justice major in undergrad. Now I'm a nursing student, and I have my master's in social work. So, back in undergrad, they said it takes a long time for the wheel of justice to turn, right? So, with that being said, and what's so frustrating with some people, woke people, they're like, oh, progress is not fast enough. This movie's inept. If we look at the main character, of course, the African American character was the angry character. Of course, he was the villain. Oh, what the heck? Goodness gracious. Can we have anything? Can we just appreciate something for what it is for 5 seconds? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's been just frustrating. So if you don't know, I hope you're not watching this and you hadn't seen the movie, because you're probably like, what the fuck is she talking about? Basically in the film, oh, it's so long. I'm so terrible at explaining shit. But let me try to explain it the best way I can. So, the original Black Panther, not Chadwick Boseman. As we know, Chadwick Boseman is the Black Panther character, but his father was Black Panther at the start of the film. Hey, don't want to hear it. He wants to say hi. Come here. Now I gotta start over because of you. So Chadwick Boseman. Ignorant. Anyway, as you know, Chadwick Boseman was the Black Panther character, but his father, he was Black Panther first, obviously, son, father, son. But what happened was, in the beginning of the film, the father of Black Panther kills the father of Killmonger because I believe they were brothers, which would make Black Panther and the main character villain Killmonger his cousin. So his cousin, they're both technically from Wakanda, ethnically, but Killmonger is more Americanized. Essentially, Black Panther's father killed Killmonger's father for some reason. I don't know. He didn't do something, didn't communicate something. I don't know. Something about the vibranium, working with the dude, the claw guy. Anyway, he was just in his feelings, but, he still killed him. And then never told Killmonger's character, like as a child, when he was still a child, when his father got killed, never told him, like, yeah, I did it. I killed your father and left you here. Obviously, who would want to admit to their fault. And so essentially he grows up angry as hell and ends up being basically the arch nemesis of Black Panther. And Black Panther didn't know what the hell was going on because he didn't know. But Killmonger knew. Probably presumed that Black Panther did know. Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther. But he didn't. So he ends up coming back basically to avenge his father's death. Fights Black Panther for the throne. He wins, like, instantly. There's hardly any challenge at all. But everyone's viewing him as an outsider. They're viewing Killmonger as the outsider. He rightfully won the throne against Black Panther. And so essentially, at the end of the film, they fight again. I guess they have some sort of a rematch. I don't know, which doesn't make sense because there was no rules about rematches, but you know how movies are, they kind of make their own rules. There was a rematch of some sort, you know. I suppose the throne was in danger, and Killmonger seemed kind of malevolent. Even though the throne was kind of rightfully his, he was kind of like evil, like trying to hurt people. And it seemed like he might have would have probably hurt his family or his sister, and I don't know. Killmonger just seemed. I mean, he was traumatized, so it's kind of like rightfully so, but it's kind of that catch-22 situation. Black Panther ends up winning in the end, and Killmonger, I think he's stabbed, but rather than, you know, him allowing Black Panther, or I guess medical professionals in Wakanda, to move the sword that impaled him, he pushes it further into himself to kill himself because he said, you know, the Black Panther was like, hey, like, you don't have to die. You know, we can spare your life. He's like, girl, bye. Like, my ancestors suffered, you know, and they would actually throw themselves off of slave ships to, so that they could not endure slavery. You know, and for some people, slavery is worse than death. So they would kill themselves. And that's why he was like, yeah, you're not going to get the pleasure of putting me in some bars or some chains or locking me up for the rest of my life, all because you feel bad about what your daddy did to my daddy. Like, it's not happening. And so some people were like, oh my God, it's riveting. Love the film. Other people were like, oh no, I'm not feeding into that bullshit. Because of course, you know, in real life, it's like Africans are in Wakanda are hoarding the resources. You know, Africans are coming over here and getting certain job opportunities, and they're able to fulfill some of their racial quotas, because they're not filled up by African Americans, but by Africans. Certain opportunities that were offered to Black people of this country are being taken by people that came over here from Africa, and essentially, you know, in their view, it's like, oh, African Americans are taking their opportunities for granted, and that's the African point of view. We're taking it for granted. So if we really wanted it, we would have had it. So there. Well, because of the systemic issues that we have, clearly it doesn't affect me, right? I grew up middle class with two parents, with opportunity, and I, even myself, understand my privilege within, you know, my complexion and my melanin. And some people don't understand their own privilege, and they have just an overall misunderstanding of a struggle. And I'm a huge fan of Tone Talks. Antonio Moore, you need to check him out. He's really great. He breaks it down in like the simplest way possible, and I have to make sure I can remember it all. I believe it's lineage, class, character, and struggle. And I love the fact that he, I I love that he separates struggle from class, because people automatically assume because you were in a higher class, middle class, whatever, they assume that your struggle can't be the same, which is completely incorrect. Absolutely love that. If you want to know more about that, check him out. But I love that. So those are the 4 different categories in which you can categorize any person, but in this context, we're talking about African Americans. But to get back to what I was saying, it's just Africans are just assuming, hey, we're not taking advantage of our opportunities. We came from nothing. We came from dirt. We came from, being low class. No, girl. I'm talking about struggle, boo. You don't know nothing about the struggle, okay? It might have been a struggle for you to get over here, but I'm not really talking about the intensity of your struggle. I'm talking about the depth. Depth and intensity are 2 different things. So meaning like my struggle is so intense, it's like trying to crawl out of a really deep hole. That's the African American view of struggle. For Africans, the struggle was difficult. It was long, but you can get through it. But when something is so deep, we're looking at something a little bit different here. And it's so complex, it's hard to even elaborate on. Again, systemic issues, such as mass incarceration. So, there's a statistic out there that states like it's 1 in every 3 black men in their lifetime will spend time in prison. There's other statistics that are stating that based on 3rd grade test scores, they build more prisons. It's very frustrating. And then you can look at the data, because some people say, oh, you do your time, move on. A lot of times there's no life after prison. So then I've done my time, whatever, I did my crime, did my time. Now I get out, I can't vote. Don't qualify for financial aid. Don't qualify for public housing. Nigga, what do you expect me to go back and go and do? I'm laughing not at the situation. I'm laughing at whoever came up with this rehabilitative system. It's supposed to be rehabilitative so that I sit, in this prison cell and I think about my actions and I repent, whatever it is that I feel like I need to do. Get right with God, apologize for the victims that I impacted, and then when my time is served, new life should begin. But it just doesn't, which is, it's horrible. And you're like, oh, well, that's just the black man. That's just his problem. Well, here's where it starts to impact women. Women are without their husbands, boyfriends. They don't have anybody. They don't have fathers. So they spend all this time in prison, and they don't know how to be a man because they've been feminized in prison. And you just get a horrendous cycle. It just keeps going around and around and around. If my dad spent time in prison, I'm sure what you're thinking, oh, I can break the cycle. I can just not go to prison. The problem is, it's easier said than done. That's with anything, right? Sometimes, if I grew up without my daddy and my mother has different men in the house, I'm sure you're going to say, well, that's her problem. That's a whole lot of problems to try to solve. That's what I'm talking about. Struggle, you have the intensity, and then you have the depth of the struggle. I would need a bomb-ass lawyer. Then I would need a judge to pardon my sentence. And then I would need a bad bitch on the outside that doesn't open her legs to a bunch of men. Then I need a bomb-ass school district. A bomb-ass school district for my kids. So even though I've been gone, and my woman's holding down the fort, and I got a good lawyer, and in the school district, you're not criminalizing kids or suspending them. That's a whole system. A lot of shit gotta go right. A lot of shit has to go right for that same cycle to not repeat itself. A lot has to really go against the grain. And of course, we can cherry pick a bunch of gentlemen that are in Congress, that are celebrities, that are doing very well for themselves after being in those situations, after being abused or, you know, having issues with a stepfather or having an absentee father. Good for them. Fantastic. But for the majority, it doesn't work that way. So I'm talking about the struggle that Africans endure just trying to get their ass into the country. And I'm not minimizing it. I'm sorry to my African friends. You get offended. Sorry, my bad. And I hate to say this. Again, this is my opinion. You can argue with me if you want to. Honestly, I don't care because, again, it's my opinion. You know, so if you get offended by one person's opinion, I would have to say that you have some pretty thin skin. Because just like I have one, you can have one. It's like comparing being African, trying to get into this country is like waiting in line at the DMV versus not being able to get my license at all and having to go through this whole appeal process, which isn't necessarily guaranteed. That's the comparison of the African struggle versus the African American struggle. And so I can understand how some people would be offended by the movie Black Panther. And I can understand how people shouldn't be. Here's why I think people shouldn't be. Again, sometimes I have to stupefy stuff, simplify it. You know, sometimes you gotta, I don't know, just like go along so that you don't waste so much of your time getting upset because you could be on your own shit, you know, developing yourself, making yourself better, you know, or making a video and communicating how you feel and being done with it. Because after this, I'm done with it. I'm going to go on to my next topic of interest. So this is the time that I'll address it. I'll address it through other themes, but this is the one time I'm going to go ahead and address it. I just feel that Black Panther was what it was. I hope you enjoyed the film. We got to look at the progression that was made. First off, black director. What is his name? Ryan Coogler? I mean, that the advancement. Like, come on. Like, he's in the big leagues now. He's up there with the Shonda Rhimes, the Spike Lee, the John Singleton, Tyler Perry. No offense, probably damn near doing better than them. Like, that's amazing. That's incredible. That's progression. And then also, you look at these predominantly African characters. Even though they're African characters, there were a lot of African Americans that played these roles. I'm so used to seeing Africans playing historical, I'm so used to seeing Africans playing historically African American roles. You know, like the gentleman that played Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, he was like an African actor. Or the guy that played 12 Years a Slave. African actor that's a hot ass mess. Like, how someone that's African gonna play an African American character? Girl, bye. Like, you look the role, but I mean, my ancestors actually went through that stuff. I don't think you can say that your ancestors stayed in the continent of Africa. Mine, they were dragged to America against their will. Of course, I didn't myself endure it. But it would still kind of be, I feel that it's only right for someone African-American to play an African-American role. But if you look at the characters in Black Panther, many of them were actually African-American. What, dog? Excuse me. Many of the African characters of Black Panther were actually African-American, which I thought was really awesome. Check that out. Like Chadwick Boseman, he was born in like North Carolina and like New Jersey, and they were born in all these just regular schmegular American countries. I mean, American states. So I think that's really cool. They're from the U.S., but they were playing characters from this make-believe country in the continent of Africa. So that was really awesome. Again, we gotta look at the progress of things, because sometimes if we try to look for shit, you know, when it's not there, we turn paranoid, we get bitter. You know, we can't recognize this small incremental progress that we make. And then also, we spend all this energy criticizing and being pissed off at all this shit. People call it a distraction to watch it. But to me, it's more of a distraction to try to debunk it and rip it apart and shit. Because then you can't advance yourself better. Do you mind? Good grief. Okay. You can't advance yourself. You can't get your education, get that certificate, get that job, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And I think that's all the feedback I have about Black Panther. I just wanted to set that record straight, and basically allow people to understand from both sides. Some people that were like, no, I'm not falling for that mess, that, what is it, that slave mentality bullshit. And other people that were like, yeah, Wakanda forever, oh my gosh, I'm a Wakandian. And just let people be hype as shit about the movie. You know what, if some individuals on either side are less educated than others, all you can do is share your feelings, exchange ideas, and hope for the best. But, peace and chicken grease. That's all I gotta say about it. Y'all tell me what y'all thought about the movie.